discussion. Is that all right with you, Nat, if I record this?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming. And it's exciting to be able to do this, even if it's a Zoom. It's nice to have some of you on the screen too, which is great, so I don't feel like I'm talking to a heap of names. So background, as Belinda mentioned, so I started in chemistry, very much loved my sciences at school. And so I did a science degree, majored in chemistry, did not think about business one iota, because just business and being in marketing and all the rest of it just wasn't something I could ever see myself doing. And so anyway, did the chemistry, ended up doing a couple of years on a chemistry bench, making various chemicals and whatnot. And then I was looking for a job, and there weren't many in chemistry at the time, and I was down in Wollongong. And so I applied for a job that came up in the marketing department at the University of Wollongong. And it was a group called Uni Advice, and what they did was promote the university to students. So I'm sure you've spoken at some point to someone in Uni Advice. And so my role was to go out and speak to year 10, 11 and 12 students and run events and bring people onto campus and show them around and provide promotional material and that sort of thing. And since I was doing that, I thought, well, it'd be a good idea to do a marketing degree so that I actually could understand my boss, who was a marketing manager. And so I could understand, like, there's a massive difference between obviously writing chemical and science reports and writing a business report. And I had no idea how to do it. And I started doing, I think it was like a grad cert in management. And then I'd done 4 subjects, really enjoyed marketing and thought, this is awesome, love doing this. And so I just kept doing more marketing subjects and ended up with the Masters in Commerce in Marketing. And so I did 4 years at the uni and then went off to a building society, a financial institution for a year. Decided that I really didn't like working for a financial institution and selling people on home loans and credit cards and loans in general. It just was not my thing. And so I then went back to the uni and started my MBA. And I started working at ANSTO, which is called the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation. And at ANSTO, they needed a person who could understand the technical side of things and operate a technical instrument, and also understood business and how to speak with customers and how to do marketing and business development. And so I then started that role for 3 years doing that. And that, I guess, expanded into lots more things at ANSTO. So I ended up being there for 10 years. And while I was there, I worked with a whole heap of different technical businesses on site. And they covered the mining area, radiopharmaceuticals, radiation safety, advanced materials, semiconductors, the power industry. And so I really got exposed to an awful lot of different sectors very quickly. And it wasn't just about building businesses, but it was also about commercialising new technologies that researchers would come out with. And, you know, they've got wonderful invention ideas and they can develop those inventions, but then they need help to actually get it out the door and, you know, get it funded, get it developed further than just a research prototype, and then also to get it out into the marketplace and sell it. And so the skills that I'd picked up and experiences that I picked up across all of my other work was actually directly applicable to ANSTO for doing this sort of thing. And it was something that I really, really enjoyed doing, because when I went into my marketing role at the uni, I really missed the science side. And I thought, you know, I've spent 4 years doing science and I've worked in science, and I'm marketing degrees, which, you know, for Wollongong, I really loved the staff, I loved the campus, and, you know, I got to also market the science and engineering faculties. So that was really, you know, good for me, and it helped me keep my science knowledge there. But then doing this sort of stuff at ANSTO meant, you know, I was delving into all sorts of different technologies. There was a wastewater technology that doesn't use a lot of energy. There was something called encapsulation and controlled release technology, which is basically just if you think about chewing gum and you have flavour in something and then over a period of time that flavour comes out and you control how fast it comes out. So the idea is that chewing gum doesn't lose its flavour, or you use it in laundry detergents or other things. And so, you know, it was to look for markets for that. The wastewater technology ended up being used in craft brewery in the US, because when you dump all of the sugary waste out of the craft breweries, you need to be able to treat it. And this was ideal for treating water that's got sugar. And then, geez, what else? We had RemLife. It was a remaining life assessment software for the power industry. And things that would take, you know, weeks and weeks to do would take 2 minutes. And so I got this great breadth of experience at ANSTO. And the next stage for me was really going to be, you know, spin off with a company and take it out, because I'd learned how to do every other aspect of taking inventions to market. And I really, really wanted to do that, but there just wasn't the opportunity. Now, funnily enough, I actually, during my master's, one of the subjects I got to choose was innovation and entrepreneurship as a subject. It sounded exciting, it fitted with what I was doing, and I wanted to know more about sort of the entrepreneurship side. And when I did that, I actually did, there was like a survey, some sort of questionnaire that I did in that, and it was, are you an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur? And I didn't even know what an intrapreneur was really. I knew an entrepreneur, I mean, you know, this is what, 10 years, probably, yeah, about 10 years ago I did this. And entrepreneur just sounded like one of those weird people who sort of ran around and did stuff and got in the paper a lot and made lots of money. And an intrapreneur, I just went, what is that? And basically what it was explained to me was that an intrapreneur is kind of like an entrepreneur, but you're actually inside an organisation that's already established, already has resources, and you're able to be innovative in that setting and actually make things happen. And so for the 10 years that I was at ANSTO, what I was doing was creating new business opportunities, getting areas to work with each other who'd never worked with each other, going out and partnering ANSTO with organisations externally to do things, you know, helping to work out how to take a technology from being in one space to another. And while I was doing all of this, I was running very fast and doing lots of things simultaneously. And people were just looking at me like I was, I don't know, off my rocker or something. But it was just very, you know, I was in an institution, it's a nuclear facility. They are very careful and slow and conservative. And I'm going, hey, we could put this with this, and hey, we could do that with that, and we can, you know, and they're kind of, I get, really? And so I felt as an entrepreneur in a really conservative and bureaucratic organisation, I felt weird. And I just thought there was like something wrong with me. And so when I'd done this survey, and the survey had said, you're entrepreneurial, and it's sort of, and that was okay, and that was a good thing, I was like, oh, okay, cool, okay, good, okay, I can, you know, I can live with that. It's not a bad thing. And it was a massive relief for me, really. And part of the exercise was that you had to also do a learning journal. And the learning journal, you did progressively over the course, and also you had an assignment, and then you had to reflect a bit more. It was a lot of reflections and internal, turning yourself inside out with what you'd learnt. And it was sort of moving towards, you know, if you had a startup company, what would it be? And I was thinking, wow, yeah, I've always thought about taking one of the inventors' technologies out there, and I'd helped one get one pretty far along the track. And I was thinking, wow, so how could I develop something that someone would actually want to buy? And I thought of lots of things, but they were mainly in the science communication area for schools, because I was interested in STEM and I really wanted it to be promoted a lot more. I wanted to be a lot more fun for kids at school. But then there's the business side of you. You do your MBA, your masters, etc., and you've actually got to think, well, if I'm going to set up a business, it needs to be profitable because you'd like to eat afterwards. Yep. And so I can be as altruistic as I like, but at the end of the day, if I'm starting a business, it needs to make money. And when you come from a science and a STEM background, actually wanting to make money is quite frowned upon, particularly in the science research world, where they think that you've crossed over to the dark side, which I did have that expressed to me on a few occasions at ANSTO. Oh, you're in commercialisation, you've crossed to the dark side. And so for me, it was like, right, so I have to make money, and doing it at a school is just not going to make me money, right? It's not the quickest way to market. And so I thought about it a lot more. I had a previous co-worker who was very much in my space and very dynamic as well. And we both thought, hey, we can start a business in the area that we're in, which is helping researchers and inventors commercialise what they've got. Because how it is done currently in universities and research organisations is less than ideal. And believe me, 10 years ago, it was even worse. It's getting better. But they don't use marketing. Like, there are no marketing skills within a technology transfer office. So all universities and research orgs have a group that commercialise technology, but it's usually science PhD students who don't want to do lab jobs anymore and then become business development people and don't necessarily have business skills or marketing backgrounds. And so, obviously you need a range of skills to commercialise, and that's what I saw was the gap that was missing in universities and research organisations, and also in technical-based innovative startups, because all of the focus is on the technology and there is no focus on the market, the size of the market, how you're going to price it, how you're going to get it to market. It's all about making sure that the technology is absolutely perfect and protected, and then nothing, right? You spend $1 million, $2 million, and then can we put like an intern on from a university who's doing undergrad marketing to take it to the world for us? So anyway, so that's how GemMaker got set up, or why we decided to set GemMaker up. And I'd worked at ANSTO for 10 years. So I had my 10 years long service leave money, I guess, as my startup for my business. So I think that was somewhere in the realm of about 10K. I found there was a Smart Services CRC, was being run by a manager that used to manage me at ANSTO. And I told him this idea of what I wanted to do. And he said, oh, I really need someone to do commercialisation of, some of our technologies, but I can only afford a person 2.5 days a week. And I said, well, if you want to sign on for, say, 3 years, then I can, start working for you on doing that, but then also getting the rest of the business running and getting the rest of the business model operating. And so I signed up and I took a leap out of ANSTO, perfectly good job that was, nice and safe, and set up the business, basically. And so I actually spent the morning just sort of writing out all my thoughts and all the rest of it so that I, get them in some sort of order for you. And I'm just so what we do at GemMaker is we have inventor invents and develops, and then they need advice on where to get funding, like how to get more funding for it to progress it along the way. They also need help with market research to identify the customers, the market need, make sure it's solidly there before the university or anyone else spends lots and lots of money on it. And then we help apply for grants or funding, or identify other external funders for them, and I guess get them in touch with each other. When it's a bit more developed, then we will help them do the marketing communications for that. And it's very different to just, you know, already being in an established marketing communications firm where you're just doing the ongoing thing for a product that's already in existence, to working out how to market something that's never been seen before in the world. Because it's really, you know, one of the things that we were trying to get out there was 3D video conferencing, right? Got it right now. We're all sitting here with it. But this is video conferencing in a 3D world. So where you can actually be walking around as these video avatars at the moment, moving around in a 3D environment as if you were on a university campus and turning up to the lecture here or the seminar there, or turning up to the coffee shop and catching up with people and all the rest of it. And 8 years ago, it just blew people's mind. They just could not get their heads around it. And so, you know, I had to be creative in the way that I was describing it. I had to be creative in the way that I was getting promotional material written for it. We had to be creative in the way that we had, that we got beta customers to test it and trial it. And so for us, the NBN was coming out at the time, and we used the NBN grants for using video to actually be able to leverage getting new clients. And so they got, you know, New South Wales government for TAFE, they got some independent schools, they got a whole heap of different customers that are getting paid for through this grant mechanism. So anyway, that sort of covers sort of things that we do. And we have a team of about 15 people with different technical backgrounds, IP, marketing, digital marketing, lots of copywriters, and that's what we do. And I think we're on track to make somewhere close to $1 million this year. The staff are flexible, so it's not 15 full-time staff, but you know, our business model really suits what's happening with COVID at the moment, because we already all work from home. We used to just use telephone and web and emails, really. So our business is already set up. So we're not going, how do we cope? Which is handy. But then Belinda also asked me to talk about, okay, so we've got COVID and we've got innovation. So what's that meaning for Australia and businesses in general? And I guess, so our current customers are Central Queensland Uni, Canberra Uni, ANU, Storm Seal, which is a shrink wrap that goes on your roof after you've had a hailstorm. So most of ANU is actually covered with Storm Seal at the moment. Alkane Resources is a mining company with a gold deposit, so gold mine in New South Wales, and also has a rare earth, rare metal project. Those things are really good in clean energy and lowering emissions. Wildlife drones, who put little tags on animals and then use their drones to keep an eye on them. Armadillo Loans, which is just a guy who's got lots of money and he can lend it to strata companies to fix things. And Playfair Migration and Law. And so COVID itself, when it's, just looking through the timeline of COVID, when the COVID actually was coming up, so because I'm in an innovation type of space and we've got people in all different sectors, it's important to be reading the news all the time and really understanding what's going on that might affect you or any of your customers at any particular moment in time. So I watched the whole of COVID happening and what was happening in Australia. So as soon as it was hitting in China and Australia was actually shutting borders to anyone coming through that had been through China, it was going to hit the education sector in Australia because there are so many students that come from China in, and we could see that that was really going to hurt the university sector. And one of the major sectors that we have as our customer is the university sector. And so we were watching it as it was coming across the world, and various countries, you know, we're stopping this, we're stopping that, we're stopping this country, that country, until eventually Australia shut its borders altogether. We're thinking from a business perspective, how is this going to be affecting our customers and our future, you know, contracts with those customers? And so each of our customers was then, you know, is losing basically lots and lots of money. And that's, you know, because it's coming through from the international sector, as well as the tourism sectors are being hit by not having visitors. And so you can see that it's going to happen, and where the job losses are going to be. And so we've got to then look at every customer we had. We had one customer called FarmBot, and they're like an ag tech where they do water monitoring on farms using equipment that they put out there. Now, we were helping them doing a business continuity plan, and the first thing that we said to them is 99% of the components for your materials come from China. And at the moment, when you've got this happening in China and borders being shut and supply chains and all the rest of it being affected, have you considered, you know, what you're going to do about that? And they went, oh, no, it's all okay, it's all okay. And we came back, you know, two weeks later after that and said, have you thought about it? Have you really looked through all of your supply chains and checked that you can get components from somewhere else, or, you know, that this could really, really affect you? And they were still off in, you know, a bit, I guess, in that sort of don't worry about it type of aspect at the time. And so then I think they've looked at it a bit more and what their inventory looks like. And so for each of our clients, we went through and asked them, what are they doing? And made sure that they were starting to think about it. Now, innovation in Australia has been the best it's ever been, I think, due to COVID, because things are happening way quicker than they ever would have happened normally. So all you have to do is look at telehealth in Australia, right? They've been doing telehealth, or trying to do telehealth, for the last at least 8 years that I know of, because at one of the places I was working at, they were trying to get it in. Now we have telehealth, I don't know, came in just about overnight, where you can see any doctor, any specialist in Australia remotely and pay for it on Medicare, right? So that coming through was just totally and utterly amazing, because out of necessity, you had doctors not wanting to see patients face to face and have the risk. And so, you know, previous areas where it's been totally impossible, there's no way, we can't put this through, privacy concerns, we don't have enough digital, I don't know, every excuse under the sun has been used to not do it. And now it's there and it's done. And so now people in regional Australia have the same access to specialists that we have in the city, where before they had to actually, you know, get on a plane and God knows what else to get there. So that is phenomenal for Australia, and I'm really happy, except for the fact that I think I got a skin cancer over here, and I'd really like the doctor to look at it personally. But, you know, hang on, where are we? There's working from home. You know, we did it 8 years ago, and when I did it and I had on my business card that I didn't have like a, you know, a proper address on it, when I started, it was like, oh, they're going to think that you're not really a serious business person. You really have to have an address on your business card, right? You can't be virtual, because then you mustn't be professional. And so, you know, I got that for about the first 2 or 3 years of when I'd set up. And frankly, it just irritated the bejeebers out of me. But now everyone has had to move pretty much online from home. And it's actually been quite funny when I've had those conversations with some of my clientele who are like, oh no, we don't need to work from home. No, we don't work from home. Or just knowing that there's a lot of distrust with a lot of organisations that like to see you face to face in your seat for, you know, 8 or 9 or however many hours or whatever, when that's not actually necessary. What you need is that people are doing things and they're producing what you need them to produce, and that you're actually paying them for output, not paying them for sitting in front of, you know, a screen next to you on Facebook, really, you know, because everyone can waste a lot of time sitting in an office. And, you know, I have staff I've always had my staff work from home, and they have tasks to do and they just go ahead and do them and self-manage. And so it's really interesting to watch the whole of Australia coping with work from home. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when, you know, restrictions start easing up and whatnot. So that's been interesting. ABC going to have a TV channel that does education to support education at school is awesome, and I wish they'd just keep funding the ABC for all the things it does instead of trying to chip away at it all the time. And face-to-face tutors, dance studios, yoga instructors, musicians, you name it, are all coming online. And I don't know if that's going to be a thing all the time forever, but it means that people can access things that they were never able to access before. And so I think what it's done is open people's minds and made them focus on what's important instead of all of the zillion reasons of why you can't do something, which is what I'm always used to whenever I'm putting up some new idea or new something, and it's like, oh no, that won't work because of, and it's like, so for me, it's refreshing. Like COVID is distressing. COVID, there are lots of negatives to it. And, you know, on that side, it, you know, it's obviously not something that you want to have happen, but at least it happening means there's so many other things that have been moved along that don't normally move along so quickly. And so the scientists actually being listened to, you know, like having the scientist up there speaking or the health clinician up there speaking when they're talking about what we're going to do in the country to resolve this. I've never seen so many scientists being asked for their opinion now, and it being listened to by management and government and all the rest of it, because it needs to happen. It needs to be done in an informed, fact-based way. So for that to happen is extraordinary and awesome, because you need the scientists and the engineers and the IT people to be coming up with the solutions for getting us through this. The restaurants and cafes have had to really all pivot, and I'm using terminology I don't usually like to use because I'm not particularly into every buzzword known to man, but restaurants and cafes, all of a sudden it's, you know, if they didn't have a Facebook page or a website or some way to, you know, do takeaway and delivery, etc., that's all now happening. And I'm pleased to say I had a beautiful seafood dinner last night from one of our really nice restaurants down the road that, yeah, we just picked it up in 2 big boxes and had the seafood platter. It's fantastic. Haven't yet been game to do that up until now, but did it. Been trying to support all of our restaurants and local businesses. And yeah, remote learning from schools and unis. It's always been about the sandstone experience and having to be there and all the rest of it. And I think there is a lot of value in face-to-face in terms of, you know, when I was doing my MBA, I was learning from the teachers, but I was learning an awful lot from the rest of the students as well, who'd all come from different backgrounds and had different experiences. And so it really brought what you learn, you know, out of a textbook type of scenario, to have all of those examples from people in your class talking as well. So I guess video conference is the closest that you get to it with, you know, the situation at the moment. And so it is good to be able to meet up. But I also think if you're working or you're doing a dozen other things, that sometimes, you know, that travelling out type thing on a regular basis can get a bit, yeah. And there's some things that you can learn remotely. I think my high school daughter has actually learned more in the 2 weeks that she's had off learning from home, where she just goes through the material, than being in class and having 30 other kids, you know, all at the teacher at the same time. So it's, but you know, she's self-motivated as well. So it doesn't always work for every person. So anyway, education has like completely changed. And I think the universities that recognise how to do online education, not just in the same way that you would do in a classroom, but really understand how to make online awesome, will be the standouts in education going forward. Particularly, you know, since there's still a big unknown about how long, you know, we're waiting for a vaccine. Next question is, what if the vaccine doesn't work? Then how do you deal with it and what do you do? So interesting thing about being in business during COVID is that when it first hit, it was like I'd wake up and I'd go, right, something's going to happen today. I have no idea what. We think this is how we're going to be operating, but we don't know. And so my staff were all very uneasy. They were all having their kids come home and all sorts of things happen. And it was a case of, we're just going to take every day, one day at a time. We know that things are going to be changing. We can try and plan for different scenarios as to what might happen and how to deal with it. And we just have to accept the fact that every single day for the next is going to be different, and we don't know what's going to be different about it. And we can just try and look at what's happening around the world and try and hypothesize out some of those scenarios and how we're going to deal with it. That was, I think, the main sort of stuff. Oh, actually, there's one other thing. In terms of the innovation responses to COVID, we had, there's lots of reshoring happening. So I don't know if you've heard the term reshoring or not, but it used to be that everything went offshore to, you know, get your manufacturing done elsewhere. Now onshoring, because the supply chains are just all over the place, all over the world for so many things, the country is investing more in Australian manufacturing to be able to shore up some of those supply chains. And I will cough after talking for a few times. And it's not COVID, but we'll see how we go. But manufacturers in Australia have been retooling. They've been repurposing themselves. We've had costume designers that can't, there's no TV shows, there's no movies being done, so costume designers are now sewing medical surgical wear and masks. We've got one of the manufacturers that does plastic punnets for fruit is now going to be bringing in resins to be able to help make some of the surgical masks as well. Ventilators are being scaled up at ResMed, and new ventilators are being made, invented, if you like. There's a variety of other, I guess, equipment that's being 3D scanned and 3D printed. There's just, yeah, there's never, okay, I'm not going to say better time because it's not a better time, but innovation is happening. It's happening on a massive scale. Business models are completely changing. Anything that was traditional before is kind of out the window. If you're intelligent and you can see an opportunity, then they're there. The business models are just all going out the window at the moment. So it's a perfect time to jump in and find a need and solve it. And that'd be me. Answer any questions.
Thanks, Nat. That was fantastic. Yeah, and I loved how you finished with find a need and solve it. I think that was an excellent way, yeah, to finish, and very inspiring for these young innovators. Now I'm just going to stop the recording so that you guys can feel